Hi everyone and welcome back to another episode of Rebel Hearts Modern Love. My name is Clenda and I'm your host, and today I'm gonna share with you a little experience I had during sex lately. We're diving right in. Because it made me wonder about female wounding. We're going deep. Pun intended. Seriously, it made me wonder and reflect on conventions and how we as females experience sex sometimes, and how much of it is like this collective wound we have still with our sexuality and how we experience sex. And yeah, I'm just gonna riff on that because I don't think we need to always have the answer. Like, this is not going to be a teaching episode like, oh, I have figured this out, because sometimes I feel like it's just important to share our experiences so others can like relate to the story, because, you know, maybe you're going through something similar or you've experienced something like this. And I mean, it connects us to other people, which is like amazing, but also I simply just think it's important to share stories while we still haven't figured stuff out, really, but we're still willing to move forward and go about our way, and like this drive to figure things out while not having figured things out yet. So this is why I'm simply just gonna share my experience and my thoughts on that. So I'm dating someone. Like I said, this episode is part of my Substack, Rebel Hearts Modern Love. The links you can find in the show notes. And I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, I published a post on like a week. I took you on a trip through a week with me. And I was just starting dating someone officially, whatever that means. You can read it in that post. So I'm still dating this guy. We're having a really good time, and we're on the same wavelength and everything's fine. Like, I really feel comfortable and safe and understood and cherished and all these things, you know? While also it doesn't have to go somewhere specifically, which is a very, very nice thing for me. And last weekend I spent the night at his place, and we had sex, or like it was like going towards sex, you know. We were in his bed and we were having a really good time. Like, he actually calls it active cuddling, which is hilarious. And I realized at some point that I was not gonna have an orgasm or something like similar to that. I was very into it, and it felt so good, but I knew that I couldn't come close to the edge. It was just not one of these days. Certain reasons, I'm gonna go into these later, but I just knew I couldn't, or it wouldn't happen. Part of my mind wandered into the how and why, especially the why. Why not? And then the how. How could I bring myself to this point where I could dive into, where I can let go enough to really dive into this ecstatic feeling? So I was all up in my head, which didn't help the matter at all. But what I'm going for here is actually like we at some point we just stopped. I mean, in my experience, in my opinion, an orgasm doesn't always have to be like the goal. Actually, I don't think it should be the goal, but isn't it about just diving into this sexual life force energy that two people create, and without having like this intentionality of it has to end in an orgasm. I think that's very, I don't know. I mean, it's awesome to have an orgasm, obviously, but it's if this is our end goal, like this is where we're headed. If we don't get there, it will always feel like some kind of failure, or like, oh, that sucked. Pun intended. Like, it will always, like, if an orgasm is what we're going for, is why we're doing this foreplay and whatever intimacy. If an orgasm is our goal, not getting to that point where you can actually have an orgasm because of reasons, it will always feel like a failure. And that's actually what I felt. I felt like a failure. Like, I was lying there having a good time, but I found myself wondering, why couldn't I like be aroused in such a way that would get me close to that, even close to the edge, you know? But I couldn't. And I was like, how can I? Oh, I have to relax. Not relaxing at all. But thing is, like, even though I know that it should never be about the orgasm, and I've met so many guys and even women, and it's always like this end game, this end goal to have an orgasm. But I also met guys for whom it was simply about the mere pleasure of creating sexual life force energy without penetration happening at all, you know? So it's all out there, but I was so in my head, it was still so present that, oh no, I didn't, like, it's not that I intentionally wanted to have an orgasm. I think it was more about, I didn't feel like I was in a place to choose. Do I just want to be in this creation, foreplay, sensuality, intimacy, diving into that energy? Or do I want to have an orgasm? Like, I felt like I couldn't even choose because I was not feeling it. Reasons coming later. But because I couldn't bring myself even close to this feeling aroused in such a way that I could orgasm, I felt like a failure. Because there was still somewhere in my head like this, isn't this where we're headed? Where we, quote unquote, should headed, you know? Is that really like where we're going? Shouldn't it be? Question mark. And I was lying there and like we were cuddling and it was all fine. Like he was okay with that. Like I guess he wondered like why ever that happened, whether or not he was good enough, probably. Two people in their heads. But I realized I felt like a failure. I felt like, and that was so intense, and I'm just gonna say it out loud, like the unadulterated words. There was a voice in me that actually wondered if I was a good woman. Like, am I a good woman if I can't orgasm? Like, am I failing him because I was not able to bring myself to an orgasm? Like, did I fail as a woman to not get myself aroused in such a way that I could give him my orgasm? What the actual fuck? You know? But like, I was listening to this voice and I let this voice talk to me because I wanted to know what this voice inside my head actually has to say. And it was shocking. And not in a way like self-deprecating way, not at all. But I was like, oh my God, is this still part of the collective? I am so sorry. Like, I want to heal this. Oh my God, I felt like, come here, voice. I'm going to hold you close. Because obviously, we did not fail as women because we couldn't orgasm. And neither, like, even the guy, he did not fail to not bring us, like, it wasn't his technique that didn't get me close to an orgasm. It was like, there no one's fault, obviously, but there's still this feeling inside of, wow, I failed somehow. I didn't, not because I wanted to have an orgasm and I somehow couldn't, so I failed for myself. It wasn't like that. It was, I failed in being a woman, like, collectively. It's not, I failed for him, not even that. Like, I failed to give him my orgasm, like, a little bit, but most of all, like, I wasn't being a proper woman. Because proper women, they orgasm if, like, the guy goes down on her or something like that. And that was very interesting. Like, that was very revealing. And I was like, okay, crazy. What's happening here? Like, that's obviously something that is part of me, part of the collective. And how can we heal this? And I don't know. Becoming aware of this voice. Yes, that's a good start. But I reflected on, because I was curious about the factors that brought me to this place. And I realized that it's like, I mean, what prevents us from being able to feel this ecstatic joy definitely is the way in which we can, in which, like, when we feel relaxed, we can let go, obviously. This is why sex in, like, public places might be thrilling, but just for the sake of it. But I don't know if I could ever have an orgasm in a really public place. Like a legit public place with someone barging in or passing me by all the time. Could not. Hidden, but passing me by, you know what I mean? Because I couldn't relax. Because it wouldn't feel safe. And I think these are two very crucial factors, feeling safe and being able to relax. And they're so connected, obviously. Because in this situation, like I said, I felt totally safe with him. I felt safe with him. I do feel safe with this guy. Very, very. But I was not relaxed. But not because I didn't feel safe, but actually because I was so allergic that day that I had asthma, and I was so, like, I couldn't even breathe properly. Like, every time I breathed out, I was like, and not in a good way. Like, I was actually struggling for breath. So my body was all tense and I was not relaxed at all, meaning I couldn't really let go. And I was anywhere, but, like, I wasn't in my body anymore. I was, like, somehow outside of my body trying to control my breathing. Ironically, I wasn't in my body, even though my body was very cramped up, but I was not where my attention was in my rib cage and not in my sacral area, you know? So that is a huge factor. When we're unable to relax properly, it's hard for us to really get in the zone. And if we don't feel safe, we have no chance of feeling relaxed. Like, I remember my past boyfriend, I didn't really feel safe with him. Sometimes more, sometimes less. And it was so funny because when I didn't feel safe with him, I didn't enjoy sex. And it was so hard for me to orgasm, even, like, I didn't actually. And the safer I felt, the better it was, and the more I could relax. So that's a very interesting thing, and I'm still in the process of reflecting on my past encounters with men. And, like, to just get an image, like, to get a full picture of what I need to relax and what I need, therefore, like to feel safe and to actually let go, and having the option of floating towards an orgasm, you know? And of course, it's how you both vibe, and if he knows what he's doing, sure, but it's also mostly whether or not we feel safe as women on how to which, like, we can relax or not. But yeah, that was a very, very interesting situation for me to realize, to just listen to that voice. And I want you like to just muse on whether or not you've experienced that, because I feel like we don't talk about this often enough, because, well, like I just told you, I felt ashamed for not being able to bring myself to that place. Like, it was all up to me. Like, it was my responsibility to get myself to that place. And like, if I can't, then I failed. And that is something that we can start healing or start like addressing by becoming aware of it. And next step, like, I became aware of it, and the next step is talking about it. So I'm sharing this with you because I believe it's important to be shared. I mean, I'm like super vulnerable here, but I also feel like it's not something I experience to just keep to myself. Because if it even inspires one other person, man or woman, because it's just important knowledge that this is still floating around in our collective consciousness, it's important to just talk about it and be open about it so it can be addressed and maybe changed, healed, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, peeps, let me know if you experienced something like that. Or even like the guys out there, have you experienced something like that? If you feel like you can't bring yourself to an orgasm, do you feel like a failure as a man? That would be very interesting. I think that's gonna be a very interesting conversation, a very needed conversation, a very connecting conversation. So please feel free to share this podcast or subscribe to my Substack. It's for free. I mean, you can subscribe to the paid version, but you can just subscribe for free and just dive into the conversation, leave a comment, and just, yeah, let's get this conversation going. And yeah, I had a blast today. Actually, that was a very new thing for me to do, like share something that intimate, but there was no other way. So here we are. And I'm grateful that you've been a part of that. And yeah, I'll see you next time. Mwah.